to America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, liberty and justice.
Mrs. Rorich,
Here.
Mr. White,
Here.
Mr. Whittington,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Steinberg.
Here. The agenda for today. Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Fire department request to increase per call rates and officer salaries. Jennifer, can you give us some background, please?
Absolutely. Good morning, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem Steinberg and City Council. This meeting is a follow-up to our new business item at the regular November meeting. It was discussed at that time to gather some more information to use as comparables for other fire departments. We talked at that time about the fire department's request to increase the per call wages and officer salaries. Right now, the only officer receiving compensation is the fire chief. The request would include compensation for an increased compensation for the fire chief, and then compensation for the assistant chiefs and the fire department president. The current pay per call is $10. The fire department is proposing a pay per call with the hopes of incentivizing better response from members. Under their proposal, the minimum response percentage to qualify for pay per call is 10%. And then they've laid out if a firefighter responds to 10 to 19% of calls, payment would be $10. If a firefighter would respond to 20% to 29% of calls, the pay per call would increase to $15. And then if a firefighter responds to 30% to 39% of calls, the payment per call is $20. And then finally, if a firefighter responds to 40% or more of the calls, payment per call would be $25. They're also proposing that a fire or rescue call lasting longer than 60 minutes would result in personnel being compensated at $25 per hour instead of just the one $10 per call. We also talked at that meeting about the fire department's recommendation to look at possibly increasing the fire rescue charge, and we are in the process of collecting that data, and we'll bring that back for the council's review at the December meeting for adoption January 1st, or at the January meeting. So there was some information that was included with your packet at the regular November meeting, and then since that time, I've worked with the Minnesota Valley Council of Governments. One of the things that we contract with them for is help in situations like this. They can help send out requests for data. And so I had asked for the per call pay and then officer pay for other fire departments. And I have two different surveys. The first one has a smaller jurisdiction. So I think like the largest one is Lakefield, and that's at 1,735 for population and down. But you can see where they're sitting for pay, and a lot of it is, you'll see $10. There's some that are a little bit higher, $25, $15, $13. So it's just kind of, it varies. I guess there's really no specific, depending on population size, it's this much. So it kind of gives you an idea, even with smaller communities, what the per call rate is. And then as far as the chief, assistant chief, secretary, and training officers and so forth, that's laid out as well. And then on the next page, there were, I think, 28 cities contacted, and unfortunately, only the cities represented here in the spreadsheet responded. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 here, it looks like, right? 6 cities. And let's see, we got Eagle Lake, ours is $10, Janesville $10 for per call. Then we've got one at $11, Lake Crystal is $12 per hour. Cannon Falls, Laverne, 11 and 13 respectively. So definitely on the, I guess, the low end of those cities that responded on the per call pay. And then each department's a little bit different in how they structure their per call training, meeting, so forth. We have $10 for the call, the training, the meetings, and some cities have a little bit different structure. And then if you go a little further to the right, you'll see fire chief pay, assistant chief, training officers, and so forth. Right now, Eagle Lake's fire chief is at $4,800. And, you know, there's some that are below that, or some that are above that. And as I mentioned before, we don't currently pay anything for the assistant chief, and it looks like the other cities responding all have some sort of compensation for the assistant chiefs. And then it's not quite as frequent, but then some of the other cities, it just varies on whether or not they compensate training officers, captain, secretary, so forth. So I guess based on the information that we've gathered, I don't think what our fire department is requesting is out of line. As we saw this morning with this morning's fire call, you know, we do appreciate them quickly responding to calls, and they're very important. They play an important role, and it's getting harder and harder to find people that are available, and especially being a community so close to Mankato, and most of our department members work outside of Eagle Lake. You know, it's just really important that we also take into consideration daytime rescue and making sure that we are making it, you know, worth their while as well. So, you know, there's a lot of information in front of you here, but I guess my takeaway is I don't think what they're asking is out of line. I don't see other departments here that show the same structure as what they're requesting, but I think it does make sense. I think that they are, you know, on the right track about what can we do to encourage our members to respond and incentivize them. And on the budget side, we do have money plugged in, so whatever is being requested here, we factor that into the budget when it was adopted for January 1st, 2024. They don't get paid until December, so you know, that's another discussion item we'll have to have, is if you want this to be effective for 2024 calls, or if you want to, you know, make it effective starting with 2025. But if you do decide to make it effective for 2024, we do have money in the budget to reflect the increase. So with that, I'll take any questions and do the best I can. I was out of the office last week, as you guys know, so haven't had a chance to really, you know, reach out to the cities that didn't respond. But I think what we have in front of us should be helpful. Give you an idea of where we're sitting compared to other departments.
So it looks like the other cities might not do that terraced kind of call pay where it's $10 and the percentage breakdown.
Right.
There's none that do that.
I didn't
That's
see
just
that.
That's just a thing that they developed for Eagle Lake only.
It looks like it. I didn't see that reflected in any of the survey findings.
Jennifer, can you confirm that they get paid monthly or annually?
Annually. So the fire chief currently is the only officer that gets paid, and he gets paid, is it bi-monthly, Carrie? He gets paid monthly.
Okay, so when it says monthly on here, that's the fire chief that's getting paid monthly,
Yes.
not
Yep.
everybody? Okay.
That's right. And then it's usually the first payroll in December that the department gets paid. And they turn in their calls to Carrie, and then she processes.
So is Carrie gonna have to figure out these percentages, or are they gonna do it for her, or how's that gonna work?
Probably Carrie's gonna have to do it, and she actually already was working on a spreadsheet to be able to do that. So I think, yeah,
I just worry
the tracking might be difficult.
tracking is gonna,
Yeah,
What I want to do, if I may, is get this spreadsheet created, get it locked down, so they can only do check boxes for the calls that people, the date of the calls and the ones that they did, everything else would automatically populate.
yeah.
Because they have to get you the data with how many calls they'd go on regardless, so it
Right.
should automatically populate that we had 500 calls for the year, they did how many, and it calculates that for them, right?
If the spreadsheet, I
Yes.
get it working the way
If it
I
works
want
how it should.
it will.
How are you gonna know though, once they get to if a call goes over an hour, their pay automatically goes to 25,
Say that again, I'm sorry. I
right?
was
Because
looking
they're
at
also
something else.
proposing that if the call goes past 60 minutes, that all those calls earn 25 an hour.
So it's gonna have to be on those sheets that they give Carrie to know. They'd have to highlight, yeah, how long people are there, and, so maybe
That-
there's some of those things that maybe we wanna, maybe that's something where let's just hold off on that part this time around, and because, so it isn't so much going on.
I can tell you when we were meeting with them from the personnel standpoint, they were very much in favor of this tiered system. It's unlike what anyone else is doing, but they're hopeful that it gets more retention and more people coming to more calls, especially those that are on that lower bubble of they want more money, but they don't want to go to the calls. So I can support that if it works counting-wise for Carrie. I just worry on that next piece up, how that's gonna complicate things to a whole nother level.
There isn't a requirement already that you have to attend X number of calls if you're an enlisted member on the fire department?
There is in our. The policy does have certain requirements they have to meet for trainings and calls, but I think it's, it's not enough that, I think they just feel like they want to do something and try to encourage more participation. What we have currently, isn't doing it, yeah.
And they also mentioned that they wanted to show the appreciation to those that are hitting that, 30% or higher calls that are consistently doing it. Not a whole lot different, but showing that.
I guess
At the same time, if you go more, you're gonna get paid more.
Correct.
You know, so.
And I think you guys raised some really good points and asked some good questions. And, just because of what you have in front of you, the proposals, you don't have to approve everything. You can kind of pick and choose and maybe modify a little bit to begin with and evaluate and, look at making additional changes later on. There's nothing wrong with that.
Do you think that more people will attend calls then if the money goes up? I mean, that's basically what they're getting at, right?
That's what we're hoping.
I just am troubled a little bit by that because I wonder, do people pick and choose which calls they want to go on or what? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah.
So like, okay, well, so today there's a fire call, but I'm gonna skip this one, but tomorrow there's a fire call and our pay goes up for more fire calls, and now we're having 100% turnout for all fire calls, which is probably what they want, right? I guess I'm a little confused. Call me naive if you want, but the mathematics kind of sounds confusing to me, and then if there's not a policy saying like you need to be at X number of calls, I guess I don't know. I don't want to say it to get in trouble I don't want to say what I'm thinking because I might not say it right.
Well, I would assume that most firefighters do it just to be a firefighter, not for the pay.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So is the terrorist pay gonna change? I know they've thought about all this, I know they've talked about all this, I know that you guys talk with personnel, but I'm just kind of asking some questions out loud, like, is that gonna change caller turnout?
I think that they're hoping it does, but there's no guarantees, so I don't know if we do it and then take a look at the end of next year to see if it made any adjustments or things like that. But, I think a lot of the times when they don't come, they're not in town, right? So like right now, probably 90% of our firefighters are at work.
Yeah.
So, in the weekends, if you're not here, those kind of things, I think that's a lot of the times what, and I think the only requirements they have are like training and things like that, that they have to attend. But not the number of calls, I don't think.
Would it be easier to just have it across the board payment and say like, well, take an average of all that and just say, well, because the percentage will automatically get rid of itself by people electing or not electing to go to certain calls, right?
That's kinda what I'm getting at is,
Just keep it simple and.
Say like
Keep
it's
it simple.
$17.50 an hour, and then you choose whatever, I guess you choose whatever call, if there's a call here, I'll choose to go on that call, or if there, if
So we
I.
go like 18 an hour, and if it's over the hour, it's 25 an hour to make it easier? Do we not do an over
I don't
hour?
even think, I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to say anything, I'm very grateful for what the fire department is doing, I just don't wanna be. Carrie's has a lot of components in this too, you know, here,
Well, as long as she gets the data, it's not gonna be a huge, right? So once you get the spreadsheet down and if they send the data, it's plug and play, right? So it'll do the calculations.
at the same time, I'm not opposed to trying it for a year. You know,
Yeah,
but to me, if you go to more calls, you're gonna get paid more, so.
well, and that's why if like you go to 20 calls and the pay is at $18 an hour, and if you go versus going to 7 calls at $18 an hour, you're.
Getting paid more.
So are we looking at two different things too? Are we looking at our hourly pay, and then are we looking at our, long-term goal? You know, our long-term goal of keeping them here too.
right.
Well, I think
And
the
we've already-
long-term goal.
We already increased that amount, didn't we, last meeting?
I mean, looking at
The
the sheet
pension,
here,
yeah.
it looks like an increase to $25 an hour is higher than every single other.
No, I'm saying like the pension is what I'm talking, like,
Oh.
you know, if, with that increase of pension, does that help keep people on the department
If you're
too?
thinking in a big picture reality,
Long
Right.
term.
Looking at the survey data from the other communities, with trainings, meetings, you know, that's another thing we should look at too, because, right now, it's, you know, $10 across the board. Does the council feel it should be, you know, a different rate for trainings versus calls? There's a lot to unpack here, so, you know, that's, and it doesn't all have to be decided right now. And, you know, thinking about it more too, looking at the $25 per hour if a call lasts more than 60 minutes. You know, I think that's totally reasonable to wait until 2025 with that one, since we're not even looking at increasing the fire call charge until 2025. I think that would make the most sense. Otherwise, we're increasing that, and we haven't adjusted what we're charging people.
I think in my opinion, if you're doing something with the fire, you get paid the same no matter what you're doing. Cause the training is just as important as putting the
Okay.
fire out.
Okay.
Well, and honestly, we hope to have false alarms versus an actual fire.
Right.
But it's not their fault that it was a false versus actual. So I think out of ease too, out of all of it, ease, learning, all of that, I'm on board with Anthony, that should be the
Being
same.
So do we want to split this into kind of two motions? One is the pay for the fire chief and that, and then the hourly stuff, so we can move forward on some, but not all? Look to you.
I think that might be a good idea. I'm looking at the data in the small towns, and I'm seeing that, you know, like, for example, Good Thunder is $20 per hour for trainings, meetings, and per call, you know, and so, but then I see like Lamberton has very $17.50 per call. I wonder if the varying thing is if they have one of those terraced tier level type things of X number of people per call. You know, so basically I'm seeing that like a lot of these cities are, you know, the high end is 20, you know, in the middle. I think that raising the per call pay is a fine thing. I think that that's a good, you know, I think that's a good request. I think that the retirement is a perk, right? And I don't know, I see that going back to the other subject of the officers' pay, I think that that's a completely normal ask based on this data that's in this on these sheets here, you know, like Laverne's fire chief has $10,000 per year, the assistant chief is 2,000, our assistant chief is 0, and we don't have anything for that other person. So I think that, like John was saying, we could split the motion perhaps into two, you know, or just determine maybe ask the fire department again what they would think about instead of doing the terrorist per call hour, see what they would recommend just for a flat rate per hour.
And make sure also with that, I appreciate that, when I just heard some numbers being thrown out here, if we're gonna jump from $10 to $20, just as a hypothetical, I would wanna make sure we run the numbers to make sure we can absorb that, because I think, you know, based on the scenarios that they ran were based on our past call, numbers, and, you know, we might be a little bit over our head if we don't run the numbers and just make sure we can actually, compensate them at that higher rate, compensate
Or is it a
everybody.
terrorist piece this year where you go from 10, 14, and then for 2025, we're at 18, or whatever we want to do? Like, is that an option? Because we didn't budget for it for 2025 though either.
Well, I think
it'd be reasonable to jump from a 10 to 15 if you're gonna do a cross-border. I think going 10 to 20, I mean, that's a huge
That's doubling
increase.
the-
That's
Yeah.
a lot.
Right.
I think incremental increases are okay, especially if you're gonna go across the board, but again, we might, if we're gonna change things up, we probably wanna run some numbers.
when would,
Do our numbers, are they okay with the 6,000 and 2,000 for the chief and assistant chief?
Yeah, that we're totally fine with for the officer pay. I was just looking, and Trent sent me some information late last night. It looks like right now, they're at about 347 for call volume year to date. And I was gonna look at, let's see.
so basically that's a call per day.
Well, I'll make a motion to increase the fire chief to 6,000 per year, the assistant chief to 2,000 per year, and the president to 1,000 a year.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Now on to the pay.
So, for the,
Send it back.
Jennifer, what is,
Question? Would they all get paid then the monthly
Oh,
Oh, that's a-
or annual? I mean, Trent or Vern is already monthly.
I don't think there'd be anything wrong with paying them monthly, right? I mean, I'm just saying, I don't.
Keep it all the
Assuming
same.
they're right.
Anthony, do you
Yes.
want to amend your motion to saying that the assistant chief and president will be getting paid monthly?
yes.
Just like the fire chief? Okay,
I'm good with that amendment.
okay, we, motion and a second on that amendment, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes for the amended pay to be monthly. Now on to the discussion of the hourly pay. My thought would be is that we should maybe task the fire department, with developing an hourly pay rate, you know, and ease into something instead of adopting a complicated structure right away, and not knowing like what Jennifer just had mentioned about the, where the budget would be and running more numbers perhaps. Jennifer, what would you say the best time of the year for a request like that is anyways?
Sorry, I'm trying to look at their call volume here. Like I said, I just got this late last night. I was trying to make sure I have the right.
The request,
Number
while she's
shares.
looking at that, as a personnel committee, we met with them regarding this request several months ago. So it's not like it just came to us end of the year, hey, we're getting our pay coming up, we want to make this change. We met with them several months ago. I can't speak to the delay in between. I think there has been a lot going on, especially internally with staffing shortages in our front office too. So I don't know where the delay in there came, but it wasn't something that just randomly came up.
Right.
If that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm asking.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question again? I'm trying to
I kinda
digest a lot of
answered it.
information
Beth
here that.
basically answered it.
My concern, you know, we're at the end of the year pay, and I won't say make it retroactive, but being that we pay at the end of the year, they've all been assuming they're getting $10 an hour, and then all of a sudden bump them up at the end of the year. We've not bumped any other department or any other volunteer board or anything up at the end of the year, especially doubling it. Not that they aren't deserving of it or anything, but that shows that they're not doing it for pay, just like we're not doing it for pay here, right?
Yeah.
So what can the budget allow? And is it like we've done in all of our other departments where we have to tier them? We have to say you're this year, this next year, and that the following year? Or can we make that big of a jump in 1 year? Especially when we didn't budget for it for 2024 or 2025.
I'm trying to make sense of their calls here with the information I got last night. That's
And
what I'm
then we
trying
have to
look
make
at
an
here.
easier, streamlined piece, because if you're struggling making sense of the calls, Carrie needs it very clear to know what people are being paid, and it seems like that's not always
That's
happening
not there.
between that and the billing portion. So I think there's
Well,
an
adding-
additional piece we need to talk
Yeah,
on.
and adding
billing.
that percentage thing is just gonna make it even much more confusing.
If we're not getting
If it
things-
already is confusing. I guess my problem, not problem, I guess my thought is that, actually, I'm not gonna say my thought.
Jennifer, do you have any idea what the budget could absorb this year for a increase in pay?
Yeah, that's based on the information that we had met with the Personnel Committee and Trent, based on what they were
But that's
proposing based on.
25 though, right?
No, we had it in 2024.
okay,
We had
okay.
those numbers. I'm gonna have to go grab my budget, guys. Just one, let me go grab it.
I was trying to
So
find
the officer pay that's accounted for.
Yep.
The calls, according to Trent, based on, their past call data and what is proposed, he worked out. I think he has it in his information here, actually. It might be in our last, yeah, so he had well, you probably don't have your information from the last meeting with you, but he had the, based on like the $10 per pay costs on their 21, 22, 23 data, and then below that with the proposal, what it would increase to. And so based on what we were looking at, I think he was projecting about, let's see, where are we at, 18,000. And I'll go grab my budget here, one second here.
This is the $5,000 increase.
Sorry, my computer. Let's see. But I had confirmed that at the last meeting too, that we, based on the numbers that he had presented me with, that we were still within what was budgeted.
Okay, so if we met in the middle and didn't go high on the calls that are at 40%, it should still, in theory, stay around that same amount.
Yeah, and that we may, I don't know, because I haven't talked to Trent about that or had him run those numbers. I think he's going on our averages from, the last couple of years and what people have responded to as far as the response rate, but are you talking about doing a flat number again? Is that what you guys are discussing?
I think that's what's, looking at peeling, especially with Carrie doing the book work and not getting, I worry the mess that it could be at the end of the year if they're not being very clean with it.
Is it a question of, there's way too many calls now and we need more personnel? What, are you?
No, I think the problem that I've heard from them before is that during the day, most of the people work outside of Eagle Lake, and so trying to incentivize them to be able to respond to calls, when.
But if they're outside of Eagle Lake, they're already outside of Eagle Lake.
But they might be within a response time that they can get back and help. I think that's a challenge. Maybe from the questions you guys are raising, I wonder if maybe we shouldn't table this and talk to the fire department, because I don't have the answers to all
Yeah,
these questions.
I think we should look for a motion to table this.
So moved.
We got a motion?
Second?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is tabled, and we will now look to have a motion for adjournment.
Garrett, before you adjourn, I'd just like to make a comment that we need to do something or put some pressure on them to make sure they're getting the billing to Carrie in a more timely manner. It sounded, at the last meeting, Vern made the comment that it was posted that night and everything was closed out, you can get it on the site. Carrie shouldn't have to go and dig calls. They should be sending it to her, and maybe that's what's happening, but it doesn't seem like that is. So I think they need to be tasked that they have to get her that data and that stuff within a certain allotted time.
Carrie,
to call.
when would you like that data?
At the very minimum, I would say every month. You know, I think that would be reasonable, so the month ends, I don't know what would work on their end, I'm willing to work, right? You know, is it 10 days? You know,
10 days
every
after the month?
I don't know what's reasonable on their end.
Well, and I think you also have to look at like insurance companies. I mean, I know it goes on and on, but like if something happened with me, I don't want to wait 2 months to get a bill. I want my bills all pretty quick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, we've had those same conversations. A great point that the sooner you can get it billed, they'll appreciate that too. People
Right.
just want to get things wrapped up.
Closed out.
Yeah, so absolutely, we
So
will
I
talk
don't,
to you about
I guess
that.
for me, I think it needs to work within what you guys and the department. I don't think it should be any more than monthly, or any less than monthly. I think if not even every 2 weeks, but I'm leaving that to you guys. It was just more of an observation from the last meeting that Carrie shouldn't be having to go out and pull that information. They should be submitting it to her
You think by the
timely.
next day, if they already post it to, do you know what website they're or what they're talking about, a portal? I don't know what that is either.
Versus what I get, I don't
Yeah.
State of Minnesota Fire.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then it should be in a very timely fashion. We'll talk to them
They
and,
could just email it, I don't
Yeah.
need it physically, you know.
You just need it
walk in,
digital.
They can email it, that's fine.
yep. And just to be clear, if it's okay, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council, could we just kind of list out the things just to make sure so we have a good use of your time next time, the following information that you guys would like to have when we revisit this again? You would like to see, you know, what, I just need a little bit more direction. It seems like there's a lot to unpack here with what they're proposing.
Is it a
and kinda
work set,
different.
do we have
Trent in Vern here,
Okay,
head back.
a work
Okay.
session?
And I assume they were gonna be here this morning, right?
I assume.
So I
I
think
was
it's just
out last week,
unfortunate with
so.
what happened, yeah.
Yep.
You know, and I'm sure, you know, if they were to explain it, perhaps the whole thing would make a whole bunch more sense, you know, I mean, but we're just, you know, none of us are fire department firefighters.
Right.
So we wanna try our best to, I think tabling it is allowing us to understand what their situation is the best, right?
Especially since they weren't able to
And
make it today.
we're of support of what they do, and, to understand better, it would probably make more sense for a work session. Otherwise, we might I mean, my questions, that's why I didn't ask some of them, because I don't necessarily know all of the answers to what I might be wondering, you know? So I think that, a work session with Trent and Vern, or maybe some other members of the fire department would be more beneficial for this kind of a meeting, right? Do we want to, well, that, and does Carrie want like something in a motion for them to get items to you on a timely fashion, or is that not something we can do?
I think it's part of the conversation.
Yeah, 'cause I don't know.
You think that's part of that's part of the future conversation, okay?
We don't know what's reasonable for them.
Yeah. I mean, what seems reasonable to me is when you're done, you send it to everybody, but
They
there's
may
probably
have
more to it than
parameters,
that.
yeah.
So,
Finish it.
so are we keeping 2024 pay how it is, since you guys paid them the first week in December?
I think to me, that's the safest way to go, and then if you guys want to go and do something retroactive, we could look at doing that. But, it just doesn't, yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts in my head about, there's just a lot of different, variables here, but, I do think, you know, the more I think about this, you know, the tiered structure is to incentivize members, and I don't know that doing a flat rate is gonna accomplish the goal of the fire department. When we initially met with them, it was to try to incentivize people, and if all of a sudden everybody gets a flat rate, I'm just thinking about different things, and like you said, we'll get the input of the fire department. I don't know that that's necessarily gonna set out to accomplish what they were seeking to do.
Well, and I think we already have the 2025 number, right? So we need to fit within that budget that you've already put in there.
So since we're not on a December schedule now, can we just do the work session after the next meeting? Or do we need to schedule another?
Could that be something that we do in the new year?
I
know that we can wait until the year end closes to do that, we would, I wouldn't do that yet in the calendar year, so.
The only reason I was saying was December is it's all fresh in our mind, to just keep it going before it's like, okay, wait, what did we talk about? Everybody go back to your notes and remember, but I'm fine with whatever.
It would be nice to get it done in 2024 to get this figured out.
Like mid-December?
We could possibly look at that. Monday, December 9th. We can talk about it more later. I can talk to the fire department, but that would be directly the week following our regular council meeting before we get into the, really the thick of the holidays, so. Anything after that, I think, is gonna, you might not have everybody's attention. It's getting closer to the end of the month.
Okay, so we'll determine that date as we see fit, Jennifer,
Yep.
right?
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Okay, we'll look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, meeting's closed.